Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Planetarium show. My name is Jessica. I am the director of the Planetarium, and with me tonight are two of the students who work at the Planetarium. I will let them introduce themselves, and we'll start with Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I'm a physics graduate student here at UMT.
And I'm Eli. I'm a physics undergraduate student at UMD.
So, tonight is our April edition of Ask an Astronomer. We are here to answer your questions. So, whatever questions you have for us, no matter how obscure or difficult or simple you think they may be, leave them down in the comments. We are here to answer them for you. And until we start having some questions come in, we have a couple of kind of astronomy current event news items to kind of tell you about. First up, of course, is an update on Perseverance and Ingenuity. If you've been here the past few weeks, you know that I am obsessively telling you guys about it. So Ingenuity or Perseverance is the rover, the most recent rover that landed on Mars, and it has a little helicopter with it named Ingenuity. And this is a super important kind of test. This is the first time we've ever tried to fly anything on another world. We don't know if it's fully possible to fly on Mars because the atmosphere, while it's there, it's much thinner than our atmosphere here on Earth. And so Ingenuity is kind of a proof of concept to see if it is possible. And Ingenuity was supposed to have its first test flight a few days ago. That ended up being canceled after um, I guess, a routine kind of check. It was doing a check on the rotors and making sure they were spinning right and that all the systems were working. Well, one of the pre-test checks, pre-flight checks, ended up triggering an emergency shutdown. And so they ended up pushing that flight off so that they could figure out what was going on. They did all of the system operation updates that they needed, and they just recently, I think just yesterday, put it through a new set of pre-flight checks, and everything looks like it's going well. All of the bugs seem to be worked out. Rotor, everything is working great. And so now they're aiming to do the first test flight Monday morning. It'll be 2:30 a.m. Central Time on Monday morning, but we're not going to get information back right away. It's going to be several hours before that information makes it back to us here on Earth to tell us if it succeeded or not. So if the flight is a go, we should have data by the time they're waking up Monday morning and know whether we have successfully flown a craft on another world, which is exciting and just so cool. I think one of my favorite things that's going on with Ingenuity is it has a little piece of the Wright brothers plane, who was the first to, successfully fly here on Earth. And so that first flight on Earth, there's a piece of that on Mars to take place of the first flight on Mars, which is just, I don't know, it makes me feel all gushy and happy. But for those, there's your Ingenuity and Perseverance updates. While we're waiting for this Ingenuity flight, Perseverance is kind of just hanging out nearby so that we can watch Ingenuity through Perseverance's cameras. And in fact, we've gotten a couple of really cool shots. So let me switch over here to my desktop view. And you can see this cool little video clip that we got of Ingenuity's little blades twirling around in one of those pre-flight system checks. And so Percy will be hanging around for a little bit while we do all of these test flights so that we can get data and images and video from her point of view. And then in a couple weeks, she'll go off and start doing her own science thing, leaving Ingenuity as little test flight strip there. Let's see. Well, I don't see any questions for us yet. Or no, one just came in.
It is how many different pieces of equipment are on Mars, and will any be within sight of one another?
Ooh,
Um,
I don't know the total number. I know there are 5 rovers.
Are there really? Wow.
Yeah,
So
because we had Pathfinder,
Pathfinder.
Spirit, Oppie, Curiosity, and Perseverance.
Yep. Yep. Well, and now 6 with Ingenuity detached from
Well, Ingenuity is
Perseverance.
not a rover, though.
Yeah. It just says pieces of equipment, though.
Yeah, so there's Ingenuity. Then we also have all of the landers. So like the Viking landers. There's Viking 1 and 2. There's one that went to the poles. I don't remember what it's called.
I,
I would say easily 20 or more.
there is, as of February 2021, there are 14 missions with objects on the surface.
From NASA or from all over?
From all over. So there's,
Really?
I have a list right here. So from 71 to 90, or from 71 to 73, it was all USSR. There's Mars 2, Mars 3,
Yep.
and Mars 6, which are looking like landers. I also don't know.
Yeah, they're landers.
And then 76 to 97, it was Viking 1, Viking 2, both landers. And then Pathfinder and Sojourner on the surface. Those are both NASA. Then there's NASA's Mars Surveyor 98 mission, which has the Mars Polar Lander and Deep Space 2. Then 2003, the European Space Agency got Beagle 2 lander there. Then NASA had Spirit, Opportunity, and Phoenix.
Oh, right, Phoenix. The Phoenix
Yeah,
lander.
2012, Curiosity. 2016, ESA had the Schiaparelli lander.
And then we also had Insight, too.
Insight, Perseverance, and Ingenuity. So there are 14 artificial objects on Mars.
And many more in orbit around Mars.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
But yeah, there's a good bit. Now, as far as being near each other than the ones that specifically were like a team that landed together, like Pathfinder and Sojourner or Percy and Ingenuity, I don't know that any of them are nearby. I think we specifically do try and target different places so that we can survey as much of Mars as possible.
I can try to find a map.
I think I've shown a map before, but yeah. Typically, when these landers and rovers are set, they have specific goals in mind. So, like with Perseverance, it's set in an area that was known to have moving liquid water at some point, and so it's a good place to look for the possibility of life having developed there, and that's why that area was specifically picked.
Yep. But it doesn't look like any of them are like close to each other.
No, that's a good question.
Yeah.
All right. Well, while we wait to see if there are any other questions coming in, Lindsay, do you want to talk about your news events?
Sure. So I have some updates about the International Space Station and also the New Horizons spacecraft. So in this past expedition about the ISS, Expedition 63, the ISS did mark an important kind of birthday. It's been up there for, well, occupied by humans for 20 years now. So this first video is going to kind of commemorate that. And then I'll talk about some of the things that are going on there right now as far as experiments and things.
This was once just a dream.
Mission and liftoff of Discovery and a team of explorers shaping their destiny.
An answer built by those who dared to ask. What if we were to channel humanity's knowledge and creativity into something truly revolutionary? What if we built a bridge between and above all nations to jointly discover the galaxy's great unknowns, to endeavor to live and to work outside our planet for the benefit of all within? What started as an accord between two former rivals became a beacon of opportunity for the rest of the world.
We have ignition and liftoff of the Soyuz rocket, beginning the first expedition to the International Space Station and setting the stage for permanent human presence in space.
We live this dream aboard the International Space Station.
Understand it's good to have you there and adjusting to your new home.
Adapting to life in space has been a process.
For the past 20 years, over 230 astronauts from all over the world have worked tirelessly together, boldly performing pioneering research in high-stakes spacewalks in the unforgiving environmental space. In this unparalleled orbital laboratory, circling the planet at 17,500 miles an hour, thousands of groundbreaking scientific experiments from over 100 countries have led to discoveries unachievable in the confines of Earth. From 250 miles up, an unbroken chain of residents have shared their view and their research with a generation eager to understand this higher plane. The space station is a symbol of humanity at its best, a shining example of international peace and collaboration in action.
3, 2, 1.
Endeavour, this is Houston. You've completed a historic ride to the ISS and have opened up a new chapter in human space exploration.
And as we turn our gaze outwards still, this International Space Station is a living testament of our collective strength and perseverance, where our human curiosity prepares for the audacious efforts ahead. We continue to bridge the distances between us and prove just how much more is possible when we dream together.
Oh, that totally just gave me warm fuzzies.
So you saw a couple of space shuttles in there. Space shuttles were initially used because they could carry a lot. They brought large portions up to the ISS at one time while the ISS was being built. So one of the reasons that the space shuttles got retired is the ISS is pretty much built now. It is 20 years old, so they are looking to maybe update a few things or even expand it so more astronauts can be up there. But yes, so that's why the space shuttles are not flying there anymore. It's mostly done. Sorry. Okay, so in this video, we have two astronauts, Kate and Victor. They're talking to a newscast, and they are going to kind of talk about some of the ways they are being affected by the pandemic and some other current events like the election.
And Dr. Rubens, I want to jump right in. Your PhD is in cancer biology, but your research centered around HIV integration, and you truly are an expert in all things virus related. So what's your impression on what's going on with the COVID pandemic, and how are you guys staying safe up there? What are your COVID protocols?
Yeah, that's a great question. COVID's affecting everything, including NASA and very specifically our launch preparations. So we have a health stabilization program before we launch. So all the astronauts go into quarantine, a soft quarantine around 3 weeks before launch and a hard quarantine at 2 weeks before launch. This time their families quarantined with them. I launched out of Kazakhstan, so I actually couldn't even have any family or friends travel. And we just keep everybody very safe by by keeping them in isolation for at least 2 full weeks. We also did a lot of testing. That's critically important for our launch program was the testing phase of it to ensure that anybody who's launching to the space station is COVID negative. All of their close contacts are COVID negative, and we repeated those tests several times before launch, and that's been a successful program so far. And of course, we were all wearing masks pretty much anytime I stepped outside my front door from about April or May on. I was in a mask on Earth. I think all my crewmates were as well. So that was really probably the #1 thing we did to prevent COVID from coming to the International Space Station. It was really a combination of testing and masks, and I'm sure we'll see at some point in the future this start to match up with some of the vaccine programs that we have going.
Terrific, and also historic. You're up there during our presidential election, and Dr. Rubens, you voted in space. How was that for you?
Yeah, it's really a wonderful process. You know, we say as astronauts up here, it's really a privilege to vote from space, but we also consider it's an honor, but we consider it an obligation. It's a duty. It's one of the wonderful things that legislation has allowed us to participate in our civic process from space. And I think everybody up here takes that privilege really seriously. We know it's our right as an American citizen, and we just think it's wonderful to be able to exercise that right from space.
Oh, that's for sure. And Commander Glover, you are a parent. You are helping your children with their homework from space, which definitely earns you extra points. How is that going? And silly question, but is there a time difference? How do you manage that?
So it's going slowly. I thought I would be able to be a little more involved. The time difference is 6 hours for right now, and so they are generally not awake when I get up, and then when I check in the middle of the day, they're getting started with their homework or their schoolwork. So by the time they're doing homework, I'm usually ending my day, and so it's been a challenge. But the good thing is I have 4 daughters, and they are all able to help each other, and mom is home to help them out. So that it's been working out, and they all finished finals this past week, and they're on break now. So, but I'm around to help them out if they need it, and I love doing it. It's one of the things I really miss being up here.
Well, with 4 daughters, it might be a little bit of a vacation being up there at the space station. I want to ask you also, Commander Glover, obviously the dad of 4 daughters, your children are obviously incredibly proud of you, but what do you think the message that they're getting from seeing you work with Dr. Rubens is in terms of educating and encouraging girls in STEM fields?
That's a great question, and I hope that they're seeing how important it is to attain a formal education as well as an informal education inside and outside the classroom, but to work hard. You know, achieving your dreams is one step at a time. You know, she didn't just show up here on the station for a second time. There was a very long process of training that she went through to get here, as well as her previous career, like you mentioned, being an expert in infectious diseases. And how to cure them. So I hope that they are inspired by that, and that they're also not daunted by the work. It is a lot of work. We have all worked very hard to get to this point, but it's worth it. Like I said, I'm enjoying every moment being up here, and I hope that they find that encouraging and inspiring.
Okay, so some fun little anecdotes about how they're dealing with the pandemic up there, which I thought was a little fun. Kate there, she was part of Expedition 63. Victor's a part of Expedition 64. They kind of were both up there, astronauts for both expeditions for a little bit. Now, Kate and the 2 Russian cosmonauts that she was working with are now back down to Earth. One of the things that Kate was working on actually was seeing how heart cells kind of grow and work in space.
And Dr. Rubens, sorry. I want to jump right.
Okay, so here's a picture of this capsule over here. Their mission is called the Resistance. It's the SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft. So this is what Victor and the other astronauts that came up to the space station were on. They also traveled to the ISS with a very special friend, Baby Yoda. And apparently he's doing really good right now, learning lots of stuff. This is, again, Kate Rubins and one of her colleagues. They're working on configuring a radiation shield for some temporary sleeping quarters, which is going to be called Casa, Crew Alternate Sleep Accommodation. Because with both of the expeditions that were there for a while, that was like 7 astronauts, which is a lot for them. And then this is astronaut Mike Hopkins. He's part of the Expedition 64, and he's just smelling some plants that have been growing up there on the International Space Station. So lots of fun stuff going on up there.
Is it by coincidence that the abbreviation, the Casa, is also, doesn't that mean like home in Spanish?
That's
Yes.
House, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Like maybe they worked backwards and started with Casa and then made the complicated terminology to go with it.
I feel like that happens more often than we'd think. At least I hope.
I definitely think it does, because I know some of the instruments, I don't remember if it's on Curiosity or Perseverance, but one of them is named like Sherlock.
Yeah, they have to.
And I think they did work backwards from that.
Because also sometimes in those like abbreviations, the words seem like kind of oddly placed. So it seems like they maybe like stretched it a little bit.
So New Horizons was the first spacecraft to fly past Pluto. And if you haven't seen these pictures from New Horizons showing you Pluto, they are amazing. I mean, it is totally different from what we ever expected Pluto to look like. So of course, after New Horizons passes by Pluto, passes by a couple other things, but once a thing is moving through space, it doesn't stop unless it is stopped by something, like it runs into something. So actually all of the spacecraft that we have sent out into space are still going out into space. I was having a little bit of technical issues, so I'm going to show you this picture on the website that I was on in a minute. Okay, so we have a couple, so New Horizons, the big thing that happened actually today is it reached the marker of 50 AUs from the Earth. That's astronomical units, and 1 astronomical unit is from the sun to the Earth. And so it is 50 times farther from us than we are from the sun. And so there are a few other spacecraft that have passed those. Voyager 2 and Voyager 1, they were sent out into space in the 70s and visited, Voyager 1 visited Jupiter and Saturn, and Voyager 2 visited actually Jupiter, Saturn, and the blue giants, Uranus and Neptune. And actually it was the last spacecraft to visit those 2 planets. Pioneer 11 was even earlier than that, taking pictures of some of the gas giants too. So all these spacecraft that we have sent out over, you know, the many years, say 50, 60 years or so, they're still moving there through space. And New Horizons actually reached this marker a lot more quickly than these other spacecraft. It took Voyager a lot more time before it actually got to the 50 AU mark. New Horizons is just going faster. We have more capability for faster spacecraft right now.
Very cool. I always love hearing about New Horizons because, you know, Pluto is still my favorite. I love it. And it's cool to see what it's doing. All right, it looks like we did get another question.
Yeah, and I in the interim, while Lindsay was talking about New Horizons, I tried to do a little quick research, and I think I confused myself further. So the question is Mars's magnetic field only in the northern hemisphere? Which
I can answer this.
Yeah, I looked up diagrams of the magnetic field, and now I'm just way more confused. So I'm gonna
So Mars does not have a magnetic field like the Earth does. It used to long ago. So the Earth's magnetic field is created because our core is basically molten metals. And as that molten metal swirls and moves and convects, that creates our magnetic field. And couple billion years ago, Mars also had a molten metal core. But because Mars is smaller than the Earth, it cooled off a lot faster. And so its core has cooled and hardened and solidified. And so it doesn't have that molten metallic stuff swirling around to create a magnetic field. So it did early on, but it doesn't anymore. The traces of magnetic field that we detect on Mars are due to something different. What happened is some of the rocks on the surface of Mars were magnetized while that magnetic field was present billions of years ago, and they became basically like a permanent magnet, like the magnets you stick on your refrigerator. And so that trace of magnetic field that we see on Mars are those essentially just magnetized rocks that are sitting around on the surface. Now, I don't know if those are localized into the Northern Hemisphere or not. I don't think they are, but I know that that's kind of where it's coming from. Lindsay, you might know a little bit more about this.
Yeah, I don't think they're just in the Northern Hemisphere. I think it can happen wherever those magnetized rocks happen. And I think it's not necessarily the field that they create is not super strong all the time. Because what happens, so here on Earth, we have our auroras, particles from the sun come to the Earth, and our magnetic field pushes those particles to the North Pole and the South Pole. And so that's why we only see auroras in the North Pole and the South Pole. But on Mars, instead of at the poles, you could see aurora where those little magnetic fields are being created by those magnetic rocks. And I think you can't see them, the aurora, all the time. So I think there's kind of some variation on the strength of the magnetic fields.
But I do know that this is one of the things we're still trying to better understand.
While I was looking it up, there was like a diagram of, they called them like radiation pockets, and it looked like there were just like little pockets all over the surface. It didn't look like it was localized anywhere.
Yeah. I know there is some strangeness in there where you can see like, and I think Eli, we talked about this in class in fall semester, where you have these like stripes of different direction magnetized rocks. Yeah. And we see that on Earth because our magnetic field, the poles have switched. Like what's magnetic north now becomes magnetic south and vice versa. And so as the plates on the surface of the Earth kind of pull apart and molten material wells up and solidifies, the magnetic material in the rock aligns with the magnetic field. And so when it's one way, it lines up one way, and when it's flipped, it lines up the opposite direction. And so you end up with stripes of rock that kind of alternate magnetic direction. Mm-hmm. And we see that on Mars, which doesn't make sense because Mars doesn't have plate tectonics. Right. It's one of those that like we don't understand how else it could form. But we know that Mars doesn't have plate tectonics, or at least not the scale needed to create this sort of variation. There's a lot of weird stuff. And I may have gotten like a little too technical there, but I think it's really cool. And it's something I learned about for teaching my class in the fall. And I just think it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have any questions, and I have a little piece of history to share. Not a ton, but
go for it.
Yuri Gagarin's first spaceflight was a week ago, or 60 years ago on Monday. Or last Monday, the 12th. It was 60 years ago on that day. So the first human spaceflight happened 60 years ago.
That's kind of crazy.
Yep, that is pretty insane. And how long was he up there? It was not like a super long amount of time. It was like a couple hours or something like that.
I think so.
Yeah. I have a recommendation to anyone who's interested in stuff like that. Not specifically that one. But really good movies about the kind of birth of the space program. The Right Stuff is fantastic. That is a really good movie about the birth of the space program. And then also First Man is also really good. It's about the first trip to the moon. So those are really good movies about that.
And then I know Lindsay always recommends Hidden Figures.
Yep.
Another great one. Yeah. All right. Well, I think the only other thing that I want to remind everyone of, we talked about it a few weeks ago in our What's Up for April. The Lyrid meteor shower is happening right now. We are in the middle of it, but the peak, when you're going to see the most meteors, happens the night of April 21st into the 22nd. So a few days from now, if you are able to stay up a little bit late the night of the 21st, early morning of the 22nd, go out, find yourself a dark spot, and sit back and enjoy a beautiful meteor shower. This is a kind of medium, moderate meteor shower, so you can expect 10 to 15 meteors an hour. But it's still a pretty great one, and the most active one we've had this year so far. So this is our first really kind of good meteor shower this year. All right. Well,
there was a pretty high chance of aurora last night, and I don't know if that's carrying over to tonight. But check out, what is it, Space Weather?
Space Weather or Astro Bob for anyone in the Duluth area.
I'll link Space Weather.
Yeah.
But yeah, check there to see if it will be the same thing.
Yeah, I didn't get to see anything last night, but I know Travis Nowitzki, he is an astrophotographer that lives up in Grand Portage, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. Like, if you hadn't seen any of Travis's work, go see. I know he's on Instagram and Facebook. Amazing. But he's already got shots up from last night, so he was able to get some great aurora pictures last night.
If any of you have ever been to the actual planetarium at UMD and you sat in there before the show started, the picture that was up on the dome during the waiting time was one of Travis's.
Yeah. He's just very talented. Brilliant.
Behind me, it was taken by me. Of the aurora actually here in Duluth. You can see some light pollution over here. Just down at Brighton Beach. So if the aurora are strong enough, you definitely can see them here in Duluth.
Yeah. Yep.
And this is kind of a good segue into what's coming up the next week. So we know with the weather getting nicer, people are really starting to get back outside. We want to give you information and tools to help you take advantage of these warmer, clear nights that we're heading into. And so on Wednesday next week, we want to tell you all about telescopes in case you are interested in getting your first one, or maybe you have one but aren't quite sure what to do with it. We want to give you a beginner's guide to telescopes, and in this we'll also give you recommendations of what we think are great telescopes for beginners if you don't have one already. And then on Saturday, we're going to branch out into astrophotography. And the image that I used for this is the same one that's behind Lindsay. That's her picture that she took. And so we'll take a look at how you can really easily get started in taking pictures of the night sky. It's a lot simpler than you think. And there are a lot of good ways to easily get started without a lot of fancy equipment, without needing to have a lot of experience. And so Lindsay's going to tell us all about that. So some fun stuff coming up next week. Other than that, we do have our Astronomy Day planned for May 22nd. We're going to start off in the afternoon outside the planetarium, where we'll hand out little activity kits filled with fun activities that you can do at home. We'll have a few different demonstrations that you can watch from a safe distance. We're still trying to follow all social distancing protocols. And then that evening, we'll have a live stream as well, with maybe some telescope viewing in there, depending on how the weather's doing. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff coming up. All right. Well, I am not seeing any other questions,
Nope.
So I think we will wrap it up there. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the show tonight. Again, you can always check us out on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 7 p.m. Central. If you missed any of our previous shows, you can find them in the video section of our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel, which is linked in the video description. And yeah, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Enjoy the beautiful day that we've had the past few days, hopefully continuing into tomorrow. And we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.